You have heard the opening on AM 652. The floor is now open for discussion. Senator Chambers, you are recognized.
Mr. President, members of the legislature, I would like to ask Senator Mines a question.
Senator Mines, will you yield to a question?
I will, Mr. President.
Senator Mines, as a tactical move, are you in favor of this amendment?
I'm not opposed to the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Members of the legislature, I'm not going to oppose it at this point because it can be fought next year. Senator Fulton's new here. I'm very concerned about animals and their welfare. If we were talking about livestock, there wouldn't be an attempt to take money and lessen it. They'd get as much out of the general fund as they could. These dogs and these cats are entitled to much better than what this state legislature is doing. There is not enough money to provide inspectors to look after the interest of these animals. Now, it seems strange to me that in a state like Nebraska, where people do understand animals, even those who slaughter them for food and raise them for food, they still should have an understanding of and appreciation for these creatures. There's dominion that was given over the whole universe that you all who believe in the Bible accept. You are to be a steward. And when you know these animals are being treated so cruelly, so viciously, and in order to deal with a budget over $1 billion, you're going to take a position to harm a program like this, I think is inexcusable. So, this is getting on the fighting side of me. You wait till that budget comes, and you wait till people start bringing things from the Revenue Committee. You talking about peanuts, and you're going to let the whole plantation go. I know new people are still under the influence of their having run for office, and they're going to cut fat here, and they're going to cut fat there, and they're going to reduce the budget. You're going to cut some of these things over my strenuous opposition. This is Senator Mines' bill. If it was my bill, Senator Fulton would be in the fight of his young legislative life, and I would teach him a lesson, and the rest of my colleagues too, because the dogs are not here to bark, and the cats are not here to meow. Doesn't mean that their welfare should just be cast aside so cavalierly. I will not watch that happen. But it's Senator Mines' bill. You notice when I asked him did he support it, he said he's not opposing it. It's a tactical move. But I'm not bound by that. I'm going to let this go. But I'm going to fix the legislature. And I'm going to try to put some pain on you all like these animals feel. Then, all of that holiness. Did you all have a prayer this morning? Was there a prayer uttered here this morning? You don't hear the Bible saying that the legislator shall lie down with the saint, but the lion shall lie down with the lamb. There are scriptures that suggest animals will be in heaven, which is something that can't be said about everybody here. Somebody cares about these animals. Somebody created these animals. Somebody placed the responsibility on human beings to look after these animals. There are priests in Omaha and maybe in other parts of the country who will have a Sunday set aside where they bless people's animals. And we on this floor are going to let these things be done. You'll do it, but there's going to be some blood shed, figuratively speaking, later on in the session. Mark well this day.
1 minute.
March 14th, and thank Senator Fulton for what I'm going to do. But I'm not going to tell you this time what I'm going to do. You'll find out. I don't care about this session. I don't care about the budget. I don't care about the governor's tax plans. With all due respect to Senator White, I don't care about his tax plan. I don't care what the Education Committee is doing. This session is mine, and you're going to have to take it from me. I want you to know what you're doing this morning. I'm not going to try to get along with these upstarts who don't know anything about what's going on around here, and they pick something that they think is weak and vulnerable and say, I'm going to show my colleagues and the people who voted for me, by God, I'm going to cut the budget. Do it. And you can probably get people to go along with you. But my friend, I feel you just did what they did in the old days. You took a glove and you slapped me. And you told me, choose your weapons.
Time.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank
And I'm going to draw my line in the sand right here, right now. And one of my colleagues has said she would offer me time, and I hope she'll put on her light because I'm going to take some this morning. Thank you, Mr. President.
Members 250.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Howard. One of the practices that these people will engage in, Senator Sinowicki and Senator Fulton, is to take a pipe and run it down the dog's throat to destroy the vocal cords so that the dog cannot make any noise. That's happening in this state while we're sitting here talking. They will have dogs out in the winter weather, not protected, inadequate food, inadequate drinking water. In the summer, they swelter in the heat. I think the measure of a person can be taken when you determine how that person deals with those who are the scorned, the neglected, the ones who have nothing they can give you in exchange for your showing them some consideration. There was an idiot in Lincoln several years ago who had a Burmese python that he used to keep in bed with him. Well, the snake realized that she was dealing with a fool, so she bit him. And then he wanted to kill her. So he took her to the Humane Society to have them dispose of her. I read about it in the Lincoln Journal-Star, and I went to his house. I got where he lived from the reporter, and I had him write me a bill of sale. I forget how much I paid him for the animal. I gave whatever he wanted, that's what I paid him. Then I went to the Humane Society in Lincoln, and I showed him the bill of sale, and I took possession of the animal. I had already talked to the zoo, and they said they would take the animal and find a home for it, which they did in another state. So I'm not just up here talking just to hear myself talk. I'm talking hoping I can reach something in you.
1 minute.
That maybe is not reached when you hear those sermons on Sunday. That is not touched when you hear these packaged, perfunctory prayers every morning. I'm trying to touch something in you that may have been more sensitive when you were a wee lad or a wee lass. When you could see an animal or a person in dire straits, and maybe you would begin to tear up a bit. Your eyes would well up. And maybe a tear would even escape and run down your little cheek because you felt the pain of that helpless creature, whether it had 2 legs or 4, or in the case of the serpent, no legs. It's difficult to reach that deeply into us, especially in a political setting. But I won't take no for an answer. I think it is there, and I'm going to try to reach it. We need to kill or reject what Senator Fulton is offering to us this morning. But if we... Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Chambers.
Thank you, Senator Waldman. Members of the legislature, we may be going to reach an accord, but I will not have an opportunity on another bill to say some of the things I'm going to say this morning because I may not have the occasion. I want to tell you all that I'm a hard man. A hard life makes a hard man. I don't have what you all call a heart. And when Cindy had gotten another little poodle some years ago, I told her, that little animal is going to take too much of your time. You're not going to be able to look after her as you should, so you shouldn't even take her. Well, another little poodle, larger than this one, managed to find a crack in my armor, and without me even being aware of it, kind of invaded my being and took over. And I was with her all the time, and she was with me, and people thought that she was mine, which she wasn't. And when she died after an operation, which ought not to have been life-threatening, that's as close as I ever came in my life to having what in other people could be called a heart. And if I would have had one, that death of that little animal would have broken it. But not having one, I survived. But intellectually, it was a devastating experience to me. I had never gotten that involved with another living creature. When human beings die, you can prepare yourself for that because you know that everybody's going to die. If a person is ill, if a person is old, you know that this is what happens to human beings. But when there's an animal with which you have bonded, and there is nothing that would suggest that this animal's end is imminent, and that end comes like a bolt out of the blue, for me anyway, it took the wind out of my sails. It took the breath out of my lungs. I shouldn't admit this, but it'll never happen again. That's why I'll acknowledge it. For a while, I had difficulty eating. I had difficulty sleeping. I actually lost weight. And I thought about her all the time. When I would drop something on the floor, there'd be a race between her and me to see who got it first. I was cleaning up the floor. She was getting a treat. All these little things that became habitual, such as when I'd be at a table typing, she would come and sit at my feet so I'd be careful where I placed them so I wouldn't step on her. For a good period of time after she had died, I still went through those motions when I wasn't thinking, because habits, some of them die hard. There was a large pillow that had become her bed. Having slept on it and rested on it for such a long time, there was a depression in it, which was hers. All of those things took on an almost mystical quality for this hard man. So if that animal can do that and have that impact on one without a heart, I'm stunned that those of you all who have hearts, who are more spiritual than I, who are informed from a superior or supreme power, cannot find it in your heart, and you all have a heart, to do that which will see that these animals are not mistreated.
Time.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Howard. And I was not going to turn my light on, but since I have the time, I will thank Senator Fulton for his willingness to work our way through this matter in a way that won't put something into the statute. And we will let the Department of Agriculture know that we're very serious about this program, that whereas we do not expect it to be cash funded because there's not enough money in that fund to fund this program, that perhaps something can go in that direction as earnest money, if you will. But at any rate, the police departments, the sheriff's departments, the state patrol do not see mistreatment of animals as a high priority. There are people who say that the police are too slow in responding to calls anyway. So they're not going to say, we're going to set a different set of priorities and place animals higher on a scale where they may not appear at all. We are the policy makers. We are the ones who set the tone for how this state is going to function and how all those living creatures are going to be treated. When we know that there is an industry based on cruelty and abuse, and that Nebraska has a reputation around the nation as being the best place, one of the best places to go to engage in this kind of cruelty, that ought to be alarming. Nebraskans ought to be saying, I did not know that was the case, but now that I know, and my slumber has been broken, I will never again go to sleep on this issue. We need to do something about it. Many people have pets. Some people refer to them as companion animals. People talk to me when they see me out there with little Nicole about various experiences they've had with animals. Yet there is such an unwillingness for the people in this state to do what is necessary to protect them. They are setting up spas for animals where people with a lot of money may treat them better than some people's children are treated, and in some cases maybe better than the animal owner's spouse is treated. And I'm not saying people can't do what they want to do with their money, but that attitude ought to be carried over so that we reach down and protect those who need the protection. And there are many of them out there. Maybe if every senator could spend part of a day watching the cruelty inflicted on these animals, it might make a difference. But I don't think it should take that. I wish that it didn't. And if that's what it takes, some will never change because they're not going to undergo that experience. I'm glad that Senator Fulton withdrew his amendment, and the bill can move forward now. Thank you, Mr. President.